Radio Raheem here with one of the men responsible for one of the most anticipated fights of the year. This is Tom Loeffler. You have Triple G facing David Lemieux. Fight fans are coming apart at the seams waiting for this thing. It's a wonderful thing to have put on. Talk to me about the 3 days that it took to develop a fight of this magnitude.
That's really, I mean, Eric was, he was telling the truth. It took about 3 days. Once they had agreed to fight Gennady, we closed the fight in 3 days, and we announced it on HBO that Saturday. And ever since then, it's been a tremendous reaction. I mean, fight fans couldn't wait to buy the tickets, and we saw it shattered all the pre-sale numbers at Madison Square Garden. It sold over 6,000 tickets in 2 days. Then it was 10,000 in 3 days, and now it was 15,000 in a week. So Madison Square Garden is just over the moon because they put up a strong financial package for us to come there. They wanted Gennady because he was so successful here in Los Angeles. They wanted him to come back to New York to fight at Madison Square Garden, and this is the reaction we've gotten now from New York fight fans and really fight fans all over the world, because then we added Chocolatito Gonzalez against Brian Viloria, and pricing the pay-per-view at $49.95. I mean, it's probably the best valued pay-per-view that guarantees action. I mean, this fight card screams action with two of the biggest punching middleweights and fighting each other, two champions unifying the title, and then with having the great flyweights on the show. It's a great show.
We know Triple G has wanted to unify the middleweight division for quite some time, but with Lemieux having this IBF title, who came to who? Did Triple G just say, you know, I want this guy, or did David Lemieux, did they come to you? Is that why the fight was so easy to make?
We've pursued David as soon as he won the IBF title. He had a great performance against Hassan Ndam, knocked him down 4 times, had a dominant victory over him, and ever since he won the title, we reached out to Golden Boy, and once they went over all the different scenarios and realized this is by far the biggest. They did a great job getting David the IBF title fight, and now they've done a tremendous job. This is the biggest fight he could be in for his career, and there's not going to be any losers in this fight. This is there's so much international attention on this fight that it's going to raise both guys to the next level.
This has shaped up to be one half of what could be considered a semifinals playoffs for boxing, which is something that we don't see very often. Now, this fight is made, Canelo Cotto is made, but the winner of those 2 fights being made is yet another challenge. With dealing with the different promoter, you know, minutia, HBO, like, how do you see that playing out, and has it already been discussed? Because it doesn't seem like that's going to happen in 3 days.
Well, it's step by step, and this is a big step towards Gennady's goal of unifying the middleweight division. I mean, since he won the WBA title in 2010, we've tried to unify with another champion, and we haven't until. That's why we have to give David a lot of credit and his team for agreeing to actually get in the ring with Gennady. Until, you know, 5 years later now, this is the first time we've been able to put together a unification fight, but the WBC has mandated the winner of Cotto Canelo has to fight the winner of Gennady versus Lemieux. Now, if you can't force someone to get in the ring, if they vacate the title, that's one thing, but, you know, Gennady's priority, he's certainly not overlooking David Lemieux. It's my job to look ahead. Right. It's my job to plan for the future.
We know the WBC ones. Unfortunately, it's really what the promoters are willing to do. Have you had discussions? I mean, obviously you worked with Golden Boy for this one. Are they committed to putting up Alvarez? He wins that fight against Triple G?
Well, again, it's a mandate from the WBC. So, like we saw with the Chavez situation last year, even though you offer someone millions of dollars, that doesn't necessarily mean he'll get in the ring with Gennady Golovkin. So,
but Tom, it seems odd that you would not have had at least some discussion about that possibility working with Golden Boy for this fight.
Well, with the WBC, absolutely with the WBC, and that's a written mandate that the winner has to fight him. Now, again, if they choose to go down in weight or choose to go a different direction, that's fine, but it won't be for a WBC title defense, and that's really what Gennady's goal is, to unify the belts. There's no animosity at all towards Miguel Cotto. Him and Canelo have sparred before, and they're very cordial. You know, I have a good relationship with Miguel and his team, Brian and Gabby. But you know, he wants all the belts. And don't forget, Andy Lee is fighting a week before, and he's defending his WBO title. So it's really a great time for the middleweight division. And that's why, you know, I think the fans' interest is peaked, because they've always wanted to see, okay, who's the best in the division. It's so hard to unify these days, not only because of the boxing politics, but just getting people to agree to fight. And I think if Gennady is successful on pay-per-view, it opens up a lot of doors financially to incentivize.
Let me ask you this way, because you're gonna have
to. It has to be three different ways.
You're gonna have to either deal with Miguel Cotto and Rock Nation, or you're gonna have to deal with Canelo Alvarez and Golden Boy. So, where do you think it's most likely a fight can get made? Not that you have a preference in who wins that fight, but as a promoter, you may have a preference in who you work with in trying to make the super fight, middleweight unification happen. Where do you see it most likely going to go down?
I'll tell you the difference. The difference was when Miguel had required. He's gotten a lot of criticism for requiring different catchweights. When he fought Sergio Martinez, Sergio wasn't obligated to fight Miguel Cotto, so Sergio agreed to 159 pounds. Then when Daniel Guile agreed to take the fight at 157 pounds, he voluntarily agreed to that. Now when they've negotiated at 155 pounds for this fight, that's voluntarily they both agreed to it. But the WBA, when you have a mandate and you have to defend a middleweight title at the middleweight limit, then as far as the weight is concerned, from our perspective, there's no reason to negotiate the weight. Now you can negotiate a lot of the other factors, or you can go to a purse bid. That's the key factor. When there's a mandate, you go to a purse bid, and then there's a split between the interim champion and the full champion, and then whoever wins goes on and puts the fight together. But I don't think it'll get to that point, because whoever wins this fight and fighting the winner of that fight, that's going to be a super fight for next year. And the financials, I mean, you saw what happened when Floyd fought Manny, and with the 4 million pay-per-view buys. I mean, that's the winner of these two fights fighting each other, that would be on that same caliber.
I would imagine that Alvarez could make 160 comfortably. Cotto may not be the same. Are you taking weight negotiations, catch weights off the table?
There's no reason to negotiate that. Like I said, if it wasn't mandatory, then okay. If it like with Chavez, that wasn't an issue with the weight, because Gennady would have moved up. But there's no reason for Gennady to move down or up, or it's a middleweight championship unification fight. It's a mandatory title defense, and it's at 160 pounds. There's no reason to discuss anything else on it.
We all hope that happens one way or the other, Cotto or Alvarez, obviously. If it doesn't, as it sounds complicated to even discuss, it's going to be a lot more complicated to do. What else could be on the plate for Triple G that could rival that kind of magnitude of a fight?
Well, again, then Andy Lee has made a couple of very exciting title defenses of his WBO title, and that's our first priority. Before we talk about any other fights or anything, he wants to unify the middleweight division. So whoever's in line, right now David Lemieux agreed to the fight.
Is there any interest at 164 catchweight with Andre Ward?
It doesn't even make sense to really talk about a fight with Ward, because he was out for a long time. Then he fought at 172, so it's not even realistic at this point, because after he unifies the middleweight division, then it might be possible. The only reason we were talking about fighting Chavez last year at 168 pounds, or Froch this year at 168 pounds, because of all, the Chavez fight would have been the first fight on pay-per-view last year. Froch sold so many tickets in England and brings all of his English pay-per-view. And so there's not much to discuss there. There hasn't been any discussions about a fight with Andre, and Andre prefers it, not to talk about the fight if the fight's not going to happen, which at this point it seems less likely to happen than it has, and it seems more likely if he's fighting at 172 and Kovalev's at 175, that seems like the likely fight to happen. If he does come back to 168 and defends his title, and if Gennady unifies the middleweight division, then I think that would be a great fight. And Gennady said he would like that fight, and at that point we could see what makes sense to make that fight happen.
All right, Tom. Usually we have a very comfortable conversation, but we had to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing. I appreciate the time.
Well, you got to focus on the unification fight October 17th. After that, then we'll see what happens.
Yes, sir. Good. Tom Loeffler promoting Triple G against David Lemieux at Madison Square Garden on October 17th. It's a great card. We appreciate you putting it together. Radio Raheem with Tom Loeffler.